Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of Outdoor Hospitality Weekly. I'm Alex Burkett, joined as always by Matt Whittemore. And Matt, we're coming back from a little bit of a hiatus here. I know listeners might be surprised to see that we're still going after this. So this is our first show here in 2026, heading into February, and I think we've got some things to catch up on for folks. And before we dive into the news today.
Yeah, really good to be with you, Alex. We've obviously been in touch, but this is the first show in probably almost 2 months.
Yeah. I mean, holidays don't help, certainly. And
Yeah,
coming out of expo season and seeing everybody, it's then you go right into holidays and right into the beginning of the year and just a really, really busy time.
right. It was expo season, then flu season, then holiday season, then
And then
flu
flu
season
season
again.
again.
So, and then just head down, getting ready for the new year and making some cool things happen. So I think we have some cool things to talk about. Excited to hear what you've been up to. And then we've got some cool stories, I think, to dive into. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I guess I'll kick it off and just talk a little bit, starting with catch up here. So obviously for us here in Michigan, it's a snowy time of year, and I'm bundled up inside these days, trying to get everything ready for following season. It was great these last couple of weeks to hit the RV show circuit, which I know people have been doing all across the country. Heard really great things from a lot of our friends and partners and people we know about from the Florida. Tampa RV show, obviously one of the biggest of the year. That and the Pennsylvania one, I think they said somewhere around 70,000 people, which was, I think, the second highest attendance recorded on record for that show. So, really positive sign to see. We attended the Grand Rapids RV show, which is very similar to the Ohio RV show, which I had been to for several years. I think attendee numbers for us were right at about 20,000 people that attended that show. So again, another really strong showing. That's the number one attended show in Michigan. And I think the consumer sentiment is high. Like a lot of people that I talked to were really excited. We got a nice little boost of reservations coming out of that. We were adding things and doing projects here heading into this next season. So I think people are really optimistic, and I think that's maybe is a little bit of projection. I think people are hopeful that this is a good year, but I think getting out there and talking to people and seeing people shop and book their camping stays and buy new RVs, like that's really positive stuff to see. So for me, that's really what I've been up to, is trying to get everything rocking and rolling here, getting a chance to talk with customers and getting ready for this upcoming season. What about you, Matt?
Love it. Yeah, and that feels like an extension of conference season where it was,
Yes.
hey, we've got these challenges. Transient demand is a little wonky and unpredictable and not feeling so great, to put it more plainly. But we're embracing the challenge. We're doing creative things with technology and marketing, and right, I think it's a positive kind of embracing of the challenge and creative solutions. So it feels like a continuation of that, which is great because now's the time to make it happen in the off season. So yeah, on my side, been really deep into AI. I've been kind of had my head down. I haven't been very active on the socials, but it's been fun. I feel like I've made a lot of progress. Really, just tried to take a few steps back. I wouldn't say I'm an AI expert by any means. I feel like I'm scratching the surface, but it's 2025 was a year of embracing AI and becoming a bit of a prompt engineer. And then at the end of 2025, it was switching everything over from ChatGPT to Claude, really deep dive into Claude's skills, which has been really cool. So I'm going to be sharing some stuff about that in the near future. And, it's an interesting juncture for the industry. There's a lot of buzz about AI, but I think when you really dig in and look at what's out there, it's still so early. There's customer service agents and there's chat
Uh-huh.
bots and stuff, but like that is still so very surface level, just scratching the surface. So I'm tuning in and at Unhitched and at Climb Capital, it's a big initiative for us to kind of pick our stance and our strategy on AI and kind of plan out the year. What's our roadmap for AI? What's our enterprise kind of organizational strategy and all that? So, it's getting in the weeds, but also taking some steps back and looking at the big picture and trying to plan it all out. And so that's what I've been up to personally, other than following the market and following some interesting news stories. It's an active market, which is encouraging. So what do you think? Should we dive in here?
Absolutely. And I think, we had kind of to kind of lead us into this, we've talked on several episodes now about, and even last year, I kind of look at this as somewhat of a trend, this kind of refocusing on operations, and to your point about AI, people trying to get smarter and how they use technology and systems, and really trying to say, okay, the market might not be as hot as it was a couple of years ago. Like let's focus on, you know, squeezing the juice out of the fruit, getting as much as we can out of the existing properties that we have. We've done that here. I know you guys have done that at Climate Unhitched. And I think now in some of this acquisitions news, though, we're starting to see, I don't want to say the trend reversing, because I think it's way, way, way too early to kind of put that stance out there. But I'd
Sure.
say it's maybe starting to normalize again, where you're seeing just consistent, like steady market activity with some of the, good key players in the space. And a lot of the headlines we'll cover today are from names or emerging names that people will, I think, start to recognize. And so I think that there very much is going to be maybe more of a dual focused, where I would say there was maybe a singular focus in years past of like acquire, then, operate. And now it's kind of like we can go back to doing a bit of both. We can be smart in our
Right.
operations and go back to buying. So I'm going to kind of rattle off a couple of these headlines, Matt, and we'll kind of take them, and I'll let you kind of tee this off and
Sure.
take them how we go. But these are just some, and there's been a ton of news in these last couple months since we last got on. But we're going to take some recent stuff here. So um, Great Escapes and the Jenkins organization, more broadly announced that they've launched a third-party management service for RV parks. Kelly Jones, obviously somebody I know well from my days at Jellystone, and they've built an impressive portfolio of parks and have kind of, launched into that space. And that again piggybacks on another trend that we've seen, kind of the launch of third-party management, something that Unhitched has done incredibly well. So they're a new player entering the space. Starlight Campgrounds, which is kind of a Midwest-based, I would say, campground startup. And I've talked with the folks over there. They have properties, I believe, in Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, kind of all in this nice metro hub, really my neck of the woods. They just recently acquired their fourth property in Wisconsin. Open Road Resorts, another name that we've talked to in months past, acquired their eighth property, this time in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, a market they know well, with having another property there. And then Gather Grounds, which again is in my neck of the woods as well. Matt, all these Midwest park operations, something that is a little bit, I would say, unique, as we've seen activity more focused on kind of the Southeast and the Southwest. They acquired a property in Michigan. When they have one in Michigan, one in Ohio, so that's kind of their third property. But a lot of both from names that we would recognize, like the Jenkins organization, and some of these new names, a lot of acquisitions news. So Matt, with that, I'll let you kind of take it and tee this off. What does this tell you about market activity? Are any of these interesting for different reasons? Let's sort of break all of this down and start to discuss a lot of this news.
Yeah, encouraging across the board. It's a tough market out there. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's a it's a small niche. It's financing's tough, although it's getting a little bit easier. I think it's the same old story, right? When you talk to people that are in the market, it's hard to find deals. So it's encouraging to see it, right? Starlight Campgrounds with a almost 300 site campground, great size property, get some scale there. Super encouraging for them. Sounds like a really nice legacy asset, bought from a family that operated it for 50 plus years. So sounds like a really nice acquisition, and excited to stay tuned to see how that goes for them. Open Road Resorts, gotten a lot of press. Big fan of that team. Really, really smart people. Now with their eighth acquisition, and that was in Dallas, I believe. So
Right.
they have a nice core of operations in Dallas, which is a great way to scale. Something we really believe in. You know, if you can keep a nice, efficient kind of proximity, at least while you're getting your feet underneath you and building a big portfolio, it helps a lot. You can share resources, you can share staff, you can share customers, honestly. Gather Grounds, you know, been following them. I've had the chance to talk with them. Really awesome group. Sounds like quite a property, 155 acres, very outdoorsy retreat. It actually probably not too far from you. It's in southern Michigan,
Yeah, and
and
a lot of Michigan properties are like that, right? Where you have kind of that outdoor
yeah,
adventure space, and yeah, it's a great area and a really, I think, nice camping market, being so close to Indiana, and then obviously pulling people from kind of the east side of the state over to the west side for camping, which is great.
yeah. Looks like an awesome property. 120 acres of forest, so you know, outdoors men and outdoors women's paradise. Sounds like a real kind of adventure base camp. Do some really cool stuff, horseback riding on site, hiking on site. So our kind of property. Congrats to them. And then I think we had with the Jenkins organization. That's a big announcement, right? They're a powerhouse. There's no real other way to put it, right? They've got a great organization. They've got quite a self storage operation, and now I think they have 23 resorts, and they're really ingrained in the resort side of the industry.
Hmm.
So, right, those are monsters to operate. That's your whole background, right? It's amenities and staff and food and beverage and activities and just all the things that you could ever imagine that can go on at a campground, water parks and all kinds of crazy stuff that you know, might push you towards having a staff of 50 to 100 seasonal employees at one location. So, you know, they've got their niche, they're crushing it. They're obviously, you know, kind of intertwined with Jellystone.
And I think it's smart, right? Like they are in some ways, I think, this is kind of a competitive move with Northgate, right? Probably the other third party management player that also very ingrained with those Jellystone type properties, and Northgate
Right.
having a lot of success with the launch of their third party management service kind of a few months ago. And I think this was a natural move. And I would say both with the Jenkins news and a lot of these acquisitions moves, Matt, I see them as being just all very smart, right? Like none
Right.
of these for any of these players seems outlandish, right? It seems like logical next steps, finding good deals at parks that have either a lot of, in a great location with a lot of great amenities, finding a good deal from a, 50 plus year old, park and seller, that those
Right.
are, a nice sort of legacy asset to buy. Like
Sure.
you don't necessarily see, maybe I would say the more risky deals like that were of a couple years ago. Like all of these feel like they are logical next steps for these organizations, which I think
Right.
is nice to see. And it's nice to see, as you said, in a tough market, people taking, a step in a deal that works for them, given their criteria and what they want to try and do, and people just being more thoughtful about it in general. So to me,
Right.
that's encouraging to see.
And I love that you brought up Northgate because so many interesting parallels between those two groups that they're similar sizes and they're both family
Yes.
privately owned. So, right, they're not syndicators, they're not raising tons of money and beholden to, you know, a big group of investors to have the 5 year plan and the 5 year exit, right? This is family assets, family operations, long-term outlook, long-term track
And
records.
you see that by the money and the investment they're putting into it, right?
Right.
I mean, the Jenkins organization has put hundreds of millions of dollars into these RV deals since they decided to go into this space. That's a serious commitment, especially when it was at the time a new space that they'd never been in before, other than, right, success in self-storage doesn't necessarily mean you're automatically going to transfer over
Right.
to RV. Like that's a huge risk and a huge commitment. And to your point, like all of those properties, especially on the resort side, like you're
Right.
putting a lot of money in to hopefully get a lot of money out. And yeah, I think that it speaks volumes.
Right. Another interesting one that caught my attention, just because my outsider commentary on Under Canvas has
And
drummed
this
up
one's
some
in your neck of
engagement.
the woods. After all these Midwest campground acquisitions,
Yeah, right.
let me give you one in New England here.
Yeah, which now, right, the one that drummed up a bit of engagement a while back was the one in New Hampshire, the White Mountains.
Right.
Now this one's in Massachusetts, so a little bit closer to Boston, which was one of my comments. So maybe Under Canvas was listening and said, "Oh, now we need to get one closer to Boston."
There you go.
Obviously, I'm kidding.
You need like a
Really
finder's
smart
fee or
people over
some
there.
acquisitions consulting gig or something.
Yeah, really smart people over there. I don't pretend to know more than anybody that we talk about. Just I like to share my thoughts as they come, and this one's awesome. The Berkshires, what a market. It's an old country club that they purchased. I think this is going to be a really cool property. Still very early stages in it, but we'll be staying tuned to see what happens there. It's the old Donnybrook Country Club, and they're going through the process. The Conservation Commission seems to like what they have to say. They're working on 94 platform tents on a 160-acre parcel out on Route 7 in the Berkshires. And then the Zoning Board of Appeals also approved it. So they're working through the process. They face some more process for sure to get it done, but it's looking good so far. And then I think we want to just take a little time to discuss a particular story here that has a lot of interesting layers to it. It's not the freshest story, but
Mhm.
curiously, I don't think it was really covered too much, right? I caught it on like a local publication that kind of missed the real story, in my opinion. We'll write about this in the newsletter. And speaking of that, I think we wanted to make one of our New Year's resolutions here at Outdoor Hospitality Weekly was to kind of connect the newsletter a little bit more to the podcast. We've done that, right? We reformatted the newsletter, but as I was thinking about this, I don't think we've spent much time talking about it or really inviting the podcast listeners to go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter.
True.
So I think we should take a moment to do that, right? This started as a newsletter, the Outdoor Hospitality Weekly newsletter, and it kind of started as honestly me just writing whatever I felt like writing. And it's small, it's a niche little newsletter. And I've always gravitated towards kind of a news oriented, analytical, market watching kind of content style. And so that's still very much it. But now we've got the three sections. We've got the one big thing, which is that's what this is going to be on this weekend. We'll publish it on Saturday. And then we have the trail map, which is a framework for operators and investors, right? A real educational, actionable takeaway. And then we've got the field notes section, which is more anecdotal, lessons learned. Here's what we're working on. Here's why we think it's important to share. So I just wanted to take a moment to say, hey, if you like what we do here and you were unaware that there's a newsletter, it's on Substack. It's called Outdoor Hospitality Weekly. I think we'll put the link in the show notes. But yeah, would be honored if you'd give the written version a try as well. So,
And I'd say if you're tired of listening to us talk about the stories and you just want to hear what we have to say, that's a
yeah,
nice companion piece to that.
yes,
So yeah,
much
there's
fewer
that.
ums on the newsletter.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, this one was really so many layers to this. It has auto camp and field station. It has Hilton and the Outset collection. It has the really cool market of Moab. It has what has been described as a Manhattan distressed hotel vulture. Not my words. I think those are the words of BizNow, the really awesome commercial real estate kind of news aggregator and news outlet. So a little bit of a teaser there, but This is a
Yeah, I
a
think this
prop.
story kind of first came. I think Matt, even you sent me the link in the Moab Sun News, right? Talking
Yeah, it's
about
what, November, I think. So it's not even. It's just nobody picked it up for whatever reason. I don't know why, but yeah, it was the to cut to the chase here. It was an auto camp field station,
Mhm.
which so auto camp obviously famous for their airstreams, essentially airstream hotel slash campground, right? They have, I think, somewhere around 10 locations and very focused on prime markets. And they launched this other kind of interesting concept, more traditional hospitality, roadside motels, hotels, and it was called Field Station. And I don't know the story really behind this, but they decided to sell this property. So kind of intertwined in that AutoCamp had launched a partnership with Hilton for bookings. So now, right, you can use your Hilton's reward points to book AutoCamp.
Mhm.
It's a booking partnership. And then separately, Hilton also launched this Outset collection, which I think is worth talking about in its own right.
And I would say
Um,
pay attention to that first word because I almost did like it kind of tripped me up at first when we first started
yeah,
prepping for this, right? Outset collection, not necessarily outdoor collection.
right,
So I think that's a very distinctive and important note. And as you're going to
for
get
sure.
into kind of, it's an interesting blend in this collection.
Right, right. So yeah, let's dive in there right away because I think there's two operating
Correct. There's
Outset,
obviously this one that we're going
right,
to talk about in Moab, and then there's kind
which
of a
is yeah,
city-based location.
it's now called Slackline Moab. And then there's the Acme Hotel in Chicago, which is a very urban infill, cool, very cool hotel, but not outdoor hospitality by any means. So it's right. Outset Collection has outdoor hospitality, but Outset Collection is not exclusively outdoor hospitality. It's right. It's vibes. It's modern lifestyle hospitality. It's cool places to go stay. Some of which are going to be outdoor oriented.
And that's to me where I feel like it's kind of anything that's cool and unique in as you said maybe that kind of higher end experience. I think they're trying to brand this as more of that like mid to upper scale, right? Where even this kind of roadside outdoorsy location now Slackline Moab, like it's still a high end property that they're trying to get good rates for, even if it's more of that kind of rustic outdoorsy kind of cool experience.
For
So
sure.
kind of a
For
high
sure.
end cool collection that
Right.
doesn't really fit anything else that they do. I feel like they're going to try and kind of build that while still acquiring great properties and great locations.
Yes. And they've got quite a pipeline. I think I read 60 some locations in the works and in development, getting reflagged or built or whatever. So back to this particular location in Moab. So it was once Auto Camp Field Station
In fact, I
Moab.
think it was the flagship in 2023, like
Yes.
of the field station that
Right.
AutoCamp launched.
I think there was only ever two of those two.
But
Which I always thought that
interesting
was a
that they
curious
launched with
thing.
this, and yeah, then now multiple years later sold it.
Right. I was always it was always curious to me because Auto Camp is so right attached to the Airstream lodging unit, right? It's their identity. Their name is Auto Camp. That's every piece of marketing has the Airstream. I mean, they have branched out into glamping tents and more like accessible tiny homes on wheels. And they do have some diversity to their lodging units, but it's their brand. They have a partnership with Airstream. It's very much their brand. So I always thought it was curious that they ventured into hotels. And so I don't know the story behind this. For whatever reason, they decided this property wasn't in their long-term plans. They sold it rather quietly, like this that that article I think even missed that it was sold. I think they think that like hotel like Hilton owns it or something. The way they wrote that article doesn't mention any sale and is like, well, now it's part of the Hilton Outset
Yeah, the
collection.
the line is basically like it's going to be under a new name beginning this month. Like that it was
Right.
just essentially, as you said, a loyalty or a brand thing, and that they just flipped the flag and like that was it. Like it just
Right.
went from a part of Hilton to like full on Hilton.
Right. And so me thought, thinking, oh, what's going on here? I started digging, and there's really no other news coverage of this. I hopped onto I think it's Grand County that Moab is in, and I hopped onto the Grand County GIS map, and I started digging into LLCs and assessor tax rolls and all that stuff, and I found the LLC. I researched the LLC, and it comes up attached to this group Magna Hospitality, which has gotten some coverage for buying distressed urban hotels, mainly in Manhattan. They bought a portfolio of like four Hiltons at the beginning of COVID and then sold them for a big profit. Actually, right before they bought this hotel. So really interesting. I think it shows, right? We've covered the big hotel companies like Hilton getting into the space. We've covered private equity getting into this space, and this is a different kind of investor. This is a opportunistic, creative type of investor that has gone seemingly from urban hotels to outdoor hospitality. I don't know that signals a complete switch, but they're at least broadening their horizons. So, thought this was a pretty interesting story to cover. I think it gives us some insight into, continued interest in the space, some big names, uh, either directly involved or tangentially involved. And I don't know, I don't know that I have much else to comment on it, but what do you have any takeaways from this?
I mean, yeah, as you described, I think it is interesting when kind of a player like that moves into something that you can't quite see the long term fit, especially with it being such a high end property with, I would say, high ADR that they're try and reach there. A lot of times when we hear of kind of these opportunistic sales, especially on the traditional RV side, there may be more distressed assets or things that maybe the buy wasn't right, and your debt is too much to handle, or right. There's a lot of times other situations at play where it's always just. I always at least find it more interesting when a higher end property changes hands because that's just where it's just more interesting. They're more rare. You typically don't see it as often, and
Right.
it's more of that kind of, as you said, long term fit and kind of this I think resetting of how are we looking at our operations, how are we looking at ways to move and either sell or acquire, depending on who's on whatever side of that. And I think this largely follows a similar theme to what we've been covering all day, which is just kind of smart moves and maybe AutoCamp recognizing for nothing else, even if the property was, let's say doing well. We don't have a lot of, as you said, outside other information, but just said, hey, like we see this as a good opportunity to refocus on stuff for the long term. I know AutoCamp's, opening a new location in Texas soon and maybe trying to kind of go back to some traditional plays that have worked for them in the past and kind of saying, hey, we can take this capital and deploy it in a way that makes more sense for us moving forward. So really smart, hopefully this was, that kind of situation and a good move for them and a good move for all involved. So Matt, with that, I think we can quickly kind of end on another story that we'll talk with some of the biggest names in the space that we've have covered multiple times on the show
Yeah.
before. We're talking about two of the REITs in the space, really
Yeah.
the two REITs in the space who were involved in the RV side, Sun Communities and Equity Lifestyle Properties, and kind of getting an update on just how they're seeing things. One really interesting piece that Matt, I kind of opened this and dug in the article that I care a lot about as somebody who, is a direct operator of a resort property for Grayson. Both Sun and Equity Lifestyle Properties are raising rates this year. For Sun, it's about 4%. For ELS, it's about 5% on average across all of their properties on the transient and long-term RV side when you average that out. So that to me was really interesting. We're seeing back to how we started talking about demand at RV shows and the shipment data and just that kind of being a puzzle. I think that's a really interesting note, is kind of both of them in tandem saying, that's not an insignificant rate jump, especially across a large portfolio. We're talking, what, 150,000 plus RV sites between both of them combined. So a 4 to 5% rate jump, across that many sites, that's a pretty big deal, how I see it. So, Matt, what else did you take from this? And yeah, just give us some commentary here.
Yeah, I gravitated towards the demographics commentary on this. I've been one to say that, I think there's going to be some creativity required from both of these groups. I think it's pretty obvious that they're built for, right, their product and their parks and their whole operation is built for baby boomers.
Right. Especially that
And
shift towards making a lot of these sites long term.
right,
You've talked about that before, of the REIT status and how that comes into jeopardy, and right, just that move. But those long term annual RV sites, that doesn't appeal to young folks as much.
right. I mean, yeah, we see it all the time, right? That, as you're a young family, you want to bounce around, you want to experience different parks, and then you kind of age into a seasonal when you like want to settle
Right,
down.
right.
It's like kind of like a microcosm of like life in general. Um, it's really interesting. It's the whole REIT status thing that you bring up, right? It's front and center, right? When you read their annual reports, that's one of their biggest risks. They lay out the kind of the SWOT analysis and the risks and the opportunities. And one of the biggest risks for both of these REITs is losing their REIT status. So that's front and center with everything in their operations. But, I think they've got incredible resources. They've got really smart people. So I think they'll figure it out. But it's going to be fascinating to see how they evolve from now until, yeah, 10 years from now, where, at that point, baby boomers will be fully aged out pretty much, and they'll be serving a completely different customer and demographic. And it's so interesting as a campground owner and as a camper, right? I The last place that I want to go stay is a Sun resort or an ELS resort, and they're great places. And maybe I'll say that'll be different if I have another kid, or I get back. I've got the rooftop tent now, so I'm not even an RVer. If I get back into RVing, it's, I don't know. But the last thing I want to do is be in an RV parking lot where I can see 20 other RVs from the second I open my RV door. I don't want that, right? I want the woods. I want the river. I want the mountains. I want, to not see anyone else ideally, or see very few RVers and not hear other people's conversations around the campfire, and wanting people to shut up, two doors down because they're still at the campfire at 1 a.m. and all those things. And I don't know, maybe I'm a unique customer, but I don't really feel like I am. I don't know. I'm curious to get your take on that, because you're serving these types of customers. You have some seasonals, you
Hmm.
have transient sites as well. You have cabin. You have a really good mix at your park, so you have a great sampling of like what do the people want? What is the demand? So I'm
Yeah, some
curious.
interesting signals from us that I've seen in the first part of the year. Our seasonal interest, I think, is much higher than it's been in years past, and it's something that we plan to take advantage of in the way that we comprise the makeup of the property. Normal transient demand is steady, if not a little bit down, compared to, kind of same time last year. But one kind of highlight for us has been group reservations, is something that has absolutely exploded. At least again for us in our park in Michigan, is we are way ahead on, batched group nights of, 3 to 5 sites or more, that are already starting to book up, my grid for the season. So I feel that's an interesting thing that obviously I don't think kind of neatly fits into either of those boxes. Like, it's groups probably lean a little bit more heavy on the, baby boomer side of things, where you have the freedom to be able to, travel with the pack of your friends to different parks throughout the summer and season
Sure.
and explore and things like that. But our lodging has done well. That certainly is skewing younger. It's interesting, even as we read up on the ELS and Sun data. They highlight that 36% is estimated of all RVers on the road today are first time or brand new RV customers, and that fall
Right.
between that age range of that, kind of 35 to 55 range, which is that younger sweet spot. And, that's almost 50% of all RVers total are in that kind of range. And I know Sun and ELS have tried to combat that through amenities and all that kind of thing, and trying to say, hey, like, we want to add and make that just top of the notch resort like experience. And if we cater
Right.
towards more of that, more, hotel or vacation or cruise like feeling, we're going to be more likely to attract somebody younger, while also still kind of holding on to those, baby boomers who are going to take up a lot of my long-term occupancy. So in some ways, I think that that's a decent philosophy. If you're not going to have a nature focused park, like, what else can you do? You've got to really wow on the amenities and the hospitality and everything else that goes with it. I certainly think here we're trying to do a little bit of both, right? Where we have some sites that are kind of that wooded and cool experience, and then some that are feel like an RV park
Right.
in that resort, where it's, concrete pads and all in a row and all nice amenities, and there's a sort of a setting for each, and we have a nice setup of kind of half of the park is kind of one, flavor, and half is the other. So I think the more that both we and ELS and Sun can try and diversify in that respect, I think, that'll be better. And I know Sun and some of their Sun outdoors properties are kind of starting to get into that a little bit more, at least from a locational standpoint. I think they're maybe doing a better job of identifying at least some of the markets that have outdoorsy things, even if their
For sure.
property doesn't. So I think that that's key as well. But as you said, really interesting to see how long term this not only affects them, the REIT status, how they position the portfolio. Obviously, both of those players have a large mix of, mobile home as well that we don't really talk about. But especially from an RV side, it's, I don't know. It'd be really interesting to see how much rate command and control they have with those long-term reservations. If that price increase was a smart idea, it is me reevaluating whether or not we should be pricing higher and whether I should be raising my rates more. But yeah, really interesting to kind of see that and see how everything plays out.
Likewise, man. Yeah, I totally agree. And it's fascinating. I can't think of, right, other than like technology, kind of AI and all that, like I can't think of a maybe a faster changing industry. And I think it more speaks to like, and it's I'm apprehensive of it in a little, in a few ways, because what I love about this industry is that it is old fashioned, but I think we're kind of getting forced to come into the 21st century here. And I'm hopeful that we'll hold on to the old fashioned hospitality. I think we're well positioned to do that as an industry, and then embrace the right parts of kind of the new age. So I think it's more apparent every single day that that's what we're heading towards. So
It's an incredible time to be a part of this industry, an incredible time to be talking about this and covering it and sharing a lot of these stories. And um, we've committed now, Matt, to get back on the train. We'll be more regular with these, I hope,
yeah, for sure.
from here on out into the season. And yeah, really hope everybody enjoyed today's episode. As Matt teased in the middle of this week's edition, go subscribe to the written version of Outdoor Hospitality Weekly. You can find it on Substack. They're free. And like I said, if you don't want to hear us, look at us, see us, just hear what we have to say. That's a great way to
Yes.
get the weekly download that way. You can always share those with a friend, share those on social media. We appreciate the support and looking forward to seeing everybody here next week for another edition.